When you walk into any coffee shop, restaurant, or retail store, you'll notice something fascinating about the people around you. Look closely at their behavior, their choices, the way they handle money. What you're witnessing is a real-time demonstration of why some people build wealth while others remain trapped in financial mediocrity. The stark reality is that most individuals are living paycheck to paycheck. And it's not because they don't earn enough money. The statistics are genuinely shocking. When researchers surveyed Americans about their ability to handle a basic $400 emergency, they discovered that 1 out of every 3 people simply cannot cover it. $400, that's less than most people spend on their monthly car payment. Yet, it represents a financial catastrophe for millions of working adults. This isn't a problem that affects only minimum wage workers or those in traditionally low-paying jobs, either. This financial fragility spans across income levels, education backgrounds, and career paths. What makes this even more disturbing is that being broke isn't really about the amount of money flowing into your bank account each month. You've probably met people who earn 6 figures yet live in constant financial stress, while others with modest incomes seem perfectly content and secure. The difference isn't luck, and it's certainly not about having wealthy parents or getting some magical head start in life. The difference lies in the fundamental decisions people make with their money every single day. These decisions create patterns, and those patterns become habits. And those habits determine whether you'll spend your life stressed about money, or whether you'll achieve genuine financial peace. The tragedy is that most people are completely unaware of the specific behaviors that keep them financially stuck. They blame external circumstances, bad timing, or simply not earning enough when the real culprits are hiding in plain sight. Today, we're going to dissect the most common reasons why people remain broke. And more importantly, we're going to explore exactly how you can avoid these wealth-destroying mistakes. Some of these might surprise you because they're not the obvious ones that financial experts usually talk about. Others might make you uncomfortable because you'll recognize them in your own life. But understanding these patterns is the first step toward breaking free from them. The first major reason people stay broke is something that sounds almost too simple to matter, but it's absolutely critical. They operate without clear financial direction. Think about this for a moment. If you were planning a cross-country road trip, would you just get in your car and start driving randomly, hoping you'd eventually reach your destination? Of course not. You'd plan your route, identify your stops, and have a clear picture of where you're headed. Yet, this is exactly how most people approach their finances. They earn money. They spend money. They might even save a little money, but they have no specific financial destination in mind. Without clear targets, every financial decision becomes arbitrary. Should you buy that new gadget or put the money towards savings? Should you take on overtime work or focus on developing new skills? These questions become impossible to answer intelligently when you don't know what you're working toward. Financial goals provide the framework for making smart money decisions. When someone has a specific target, like eliminating debt within 2 years or saving for a house down payment, every spending choice gets filtered through that objective. The person with clear goals asks different questions. Instead of wondering if they can afford something, they ask whether that purchase moves them closer to or further from their financial target. The second reason people remain financially stuck is their complete lack of preparation for life's inevitable surprises. Remember that statistic about 1/3 of Americans being unable to handle a $400 emergency? This reveals a fundamental misunderstanding about how life actually works. Unexpected expenses aren't really unexpected at all. Cars break down, appliances fail, medical issues arise, and job situations change. These events are predictable in their unpredictability. When people haven't prepared for these entirely normal life events, they're forced to make desperate financial decisions. They might put the car repair on a credit card, borrow money from family, or even skip the repair entirely and hope the problem goes away. Each of these choices creates additional financial stress and often leads to even more expensive problems down the road. The third major wealth destroyer is living without a spending plan. Most people would never run a business without tracking income and expenses. Yet, they run their personal finances in exactly this careless manner. They have a rough idea of what they earn and a vague sense of where their money goes, but they lack the precise awareness that comes from actually monitoring their financial flows. This ignorance creates a phenomenon that almost everyone has experienced. You get paid. You make what feel like reasonable purchases throughout the week, and then suddenly, you're wondering where all your money disappeared. Without tracking, it's impossible to identify the small spending leaks that drain your financial resources. Those $5 coffee purchases, the impulse buys at the grocery store, the subscription services you forgot about. They all add up to significant amounts over time. The fourth reason people stay broke might be the most psychologically complex. They live entirely in the present moment. When it comes to money decisions, there's an understandable appeal to this approach. Life is short, youth doesn't last forever, and there's something to be said for enjoying your money while you're young enough to appreciate it. The problem arises when this present-focused thinking becomes so extreme that it completely ignores future consequences. These individuals make financial choices as if their future selves don't exist. They spend money on immediate pleasures while assuming that somehow, magically, their future financial needs will take care of themselves. This isn't about being overly restrictive with money or sacrificing all enjoyment for some distant retirement. It's about finding the right balance between present enjoyment and future security. The fifth wealth-destroying behavior involves expensive habits that people often don't even recognize as significant financial drains. These aren't necessarily the obvious vices, though those certainly qualify. We're talking about patterns of spending that feel normal and justified, but actually represent massive transfers of wealth out of your pocket. At current prices, this habit costs roughly $250 per month. Over a year, that's $3,000. Over a decade, it's $30,000, not including the compound growth that money could have generated if invested instead. The same person who spends this amount on cigarettes will often claim they can't afford to invest money for their future. Similarly, frequent restaurant dining represents another major expense that people tend to underestimate. Grabbing lunch out daily, ordering dinner a few times per week. These seemingly small choices can easily consume $500 to $800 monthly. Again, this is money that could be building wealth instead of disappearing into temporary consumption. The sixth reason people remain broke involves their relationship with debt. Specifically, their inability to distinguish between debt that helps build wealth and debt that destroys it. Not all borrowing is created equal. Yet, most people treat every form of debt as essentially the same. Productive debt helps you acquire assets that generate income or appreciate in value over time. A mortgage on a rental property, student loans for high-value education, or business loans that fund profitable ventures can all be considered good debt. These borrowing decisions help you build wealth faster than you could by saving a loan. Destructive debt, on the other hand, is money borrowed to purchase items that lose value immediately and provide no ongoing financial benefit. Credit card debt for vacations, car loans for vehicles beyond your actual needs, and financing for consumer goods all fall into this category. This type of debt not only charges you interest, but it's also secured by assets that are depreciating rapidly. What makes this particularly devastating is that destructive debt often enables people to make purchases they genuinely cannot afford. They're not just paying interest on these items. They're also stretching their budget beyond sustainable limits, which creates ongoing financial stress and limits their ability to build wealth through investing. As we continue exploring these wealth-destroying patterns, you'll start to see how they interconnect and reinforce each other, creating a cycle that keeps people financially trapped regardless of their income level. The seventh reason people remain financially stuck reveals something uncomfortable about human psychology. This behavior is so common that it has become a defining characteristic of the modern consumer mindset. Yet most people who engage in it would deny doing so if asked directly. Watch people at a shopping mall, observe social media posts, or notice what happens when someone gets a promotion at work. You'll witness this phenomenon repeatedly. Someone buys an expensive watch, not because they need better timekeeping, but because they want colleagues to notice their success. Another person leases a luxury car they can barely afford, because they believe it projects an image of prosperity. These decisions aren't driven by practical needs or genuine enjoyment. They're motivated by the desire to create impressions. The psychological trap here runs deeper than simple vanity. Many people have convinced themselves that looking successful will somehow lead to actual success. They believe that if they dress the part, drive the right car, and live in the right neighborhood, opportunities will naturally flow their way. While appearance certainly matters in some professional contexts, this thinking often becomes an expensive form of self-deception. The real irony is that truly wealthy individuals often display the opposite behavior. They drive older cars, wear modest clothing, and live in houses that are comfortable rather than impressive. They understand that every dollar spent on appearances is a dollar not working to generate more wealth. Meanwhile, people who are actually struggling financially are often the ones spending the most money trying to look rich. This appearance-focused spending creates a vicious cycle. The more money someone spends on looking successful, the less money they have available for actual wealth-building activities. They become trapped in a performance that requires increasingly expensive props while their real financial situation deteriorates behind the scenes. Eventually, maintaining the facade becomes so expensive that it prevents them from ever achieving genuine financial success. The eighth wealth-destroying behavior involves a fundamental misunderstanding about how money should flow through their lives. Most people approach their finances backward. They pay everyone else first, then hope something will be left over for their own future. This might seem like the responsible approach, but it practically guarantees that wealth building will never become a priority. Here's how this typically plays out. Someone receives their paycheck and immediately starts paying bills, buying groceries, filling up their gas tank, and handling various other expenses. If anything remains at the end of the month, they might put it into savings or investments. The problem with this approach is that there's rarely anything meaningful left over. Life has a way of expanding expenses to consume available income, and when your own financial future gets last priority, it usually gets nothing at all. The alternative approach flips the sequence entirely before paying any bills or making any purchases. A predetermined amount gets directed toward investments and savings. This money gets treated like any other essential expense, something that must be paid regardless of what else is happening financially. Only after securing their own financial future do they handle other expenses with whatever remains. This shift in priority creates powerful psychological changes. When someone knows they've already taken care of their future self, they make different decisions with their remaining money. They become more creative about reducing expenses, more motivated to increase income, and more selective about purchases. They're forced to live on less than their full income, which prevents lifestyle inflation and creates sustainable wealth-building habits. The ninth reason people stay broke connects to their relationship with risk and opportunity. While some people are reckless with money, others are so afraid of any financial risk that they miss opportunities for growth. They keep their money in savings accounts, earning minimal interest while inflation slowly erodes their purchasing power. They avoid investing in stocks, real estate, or business opportunities because they might lose money, not realizing that not investing is itself a risky decision. This excessive caution often stems from a fundamental misunderstanding about risk. Many people view risk as something to be avoided entirely, when successful wealth building actually requires learning to manage risk intelligently. The goal isn't to eliminate risk, but to take calculated risks that offer reasonable potential for reward while protecting yourself from catastrophic losses. Fear-based financial decisions also prevent people from taking advantage of opportunities that require some level of risk. They might pass up a chance to start a side business, invest in their education, or move to a city with better job prospects, because these choices involve uncertainty. Meanwhile, they fail to recognize that staying in their current situation also involves risk. The risk of remaining financially stagnant while costs continue rising around them. The 10th wealth-destroying pattern involves their approach to income generation. Most broke people think about money in terms of trading time for dollars, and they never develop additional income streams. They work their regular job, collect their paycheck, and assume that working more hours is the only way to earn more money. This linear thinking severely limits their financial potential. Wealthy individuals understand that true financial freedom comes from developing multiple sources of income that don't require their direct time investment. This might include rental properties, dividend-paying stocks, business ownership, or royalties from creative work. These income streams continue generating money even when they're sleeping, traveling, or focusing on other activities. The transition from earned income to passive income requires initial effort and often some financial investment, which is why broke people struggle to make this shift. They're so focused on immediate financial needs that they can't invest the time or money required to build these alternative income sources. This keeps them trapped in the time for money exchange indefinitely. What makes this particularly challenging is that building passive income streams often requires reducing current consumption to free up resources for investment. Someone might need to live in a smaller apartment for a few years to save money for a rental property down payment. Or they might need to work evenings and weekends to build a business while keeping their day job. These sacrifices feel difficult in the short term, but they're essential for long-term financial freedom. The 11th reason people remain financially stuck involves their relationship with financial education. Most people stop learning about money once they finish school. if they ever learned about it at all. They treat financial knowledge as something static, rather than recognizing it as a skill that requires continuous development. Financial markets change, tax laws evolve, new investment opportunities emerge, and economic conditions shift. Someone who learned basic money management principles 20 years ago but hasn't updated their knowledge since then is operating with outdated information. They might be missing opportunities or making decisions based on circumstances that no longer exist. This lack of ongoing financial education also makes people vulnerable to bad advice and predatory financial products. Without sufficient knowledge to evaluate recommendations critically, they often make decisions based on whoever sounds most confident or whoever is trying to sell them something. They might pay excessive fees for investment products, fall for get-rich-quick schemes, or make major financial decisions without understanding the long-term consequences. The wealth-building journey requires understanding concepts like compound interest, tax optimization, asset allocation, and risk management. These aren't complex topics, but they do require some study and practical application. People who commit to continuously improving their financial knowledge gain significant advantages over those who remain financially illiterate. As we've explored these patterns, you've probably recognized some of them in your own life or in the lives of people around you. The encouraging news is that awareness is the first step toward change. And every one of these wealth-destroying behaviors can be modified with the right approach and commitment. The most important thing to understand is that breaking free from these patterns doesn't require a complete life overhaul or some dramatic transformation. Small, consistent changes in how you handle money can produce remarkable results over time. The key is choosing one or two areas where you're currently making wealth-destroying decisions and focusing on improving those specific behaviors. Start by examining your relationship with financial goals. If you've been drifting without clear targets, take time this week to define exactly what you want to achieve financially. Make these goals specific and time-bound.